This is why you shouldn't worry anymore. My life has been filled with terrible misfortune, most of which never happened. This is a quote that I love reading to my clients, and it's by a guy named Michel de Montaigu. Okay, and this is a quote from about 500 years ago. And I want to read that one more time. My life has been filled with terrible misfortunes, most of which have never happened. This is something that's very true when it comes to people who are, let's say, worry wards, right? People that deal with anxiety, people that constantly feed into negative thoughts. It tends to grasp them and hold them really, really tight, and it doesn't let them go, only for them to realize that the most gruesome part of that whole worry is the worry itself. It's not what we're actually worrying about, but it's the worry itself that tends to be the most gruesome and the most uncomfortable part of the whole anxiety experience that you're feeling at that moment. Now, I want to read about a study that I gave to one of my clients this past week because I knew it was something that would help him to overcome that worry when he's up at night thinking of 100 different things that could happen, right? There used to be a show called 100 Ways or 1,000 Ways to Die, and that's kind of what their mind is doing. It doesn't have anything to do with death, but there's 1,000 ways that something could go wrong, or something could hurt him or someone that he loves. And as a result, the mind just keeps going and going and going. Sometimes I tell my clients that your mind is like a 24-hour news cycle. It just keeps going and going and going, and it never stops. That's why we have to know how to change the channel, or let's say cut off the TV, or just walk away from the TV while it's still playing. And when we walk away from the TV, so walking away from the mind, maybe you decide to go out for a walk because that's what's meaningful for you. What that may look like for you, let's say if you're an entrepreneur, maybe walking away from your worry is doing something that you deeply value with one specific client, one specific customer. Maybe this one thing in your business, it could be something like donating your time or donating some funds or money to a charity, if you will, right? There's so many things you can do that will allow you to step away from that worry, okay? So I want to read about this study. So in this study, they had the participants write down all the things that we're worrying about over an extended period of time, okay? So it may have been like a few months, if you will. And what they had them do was go back to that list and notice how many of these things did not happen. And what they found out is that 85% of all the things that they were worrying about didn't come to fruition. It's crazy, right? 85%, but it gets better. So what they then go on to say is that for that last 15% of the things that did happen, 79% of the people in the study discovered that they could either handle the difficulty behind the thing that they were worrying about, or the difficulty taught them a very valuable lesson that was worth learning. Okay, so think about that, right? Out of that last 15%, 79% of them saw that, hey, they could handle it, or they learned a valuable lesson from it. So what that would equate to is that 97% of the things that they were worrying about, they found that they had the power to overcome it, right? And the most gruesome, the most terrible, the most uncomfortable part about that whole worry, that whole situation, was simply the worry itself. It's that constant feedback loop that their mind was running into. Think about that, guys. So out of all the things that you're worrying about at this moment, there's a good chance that 97% of those things you can handle, or it won't even come to fruition, which means that the worst part right now is that thing that you're doing to yourself when you're late at night or early in the morning, where you're just thinking and thinking and thinking. So that should give you some relief right there, meaning that 97% of these things that I'm worried about, in a few days, in a few months, right? It won't even be something that would be a blip on my radar. It won't be anything that would change my life the way that I think it will right now. And that should give you a lot of reassurance, okay? So that's why I wanted to do this podcast. And I'm gonna give you guys a few more other things to keep in mind to help you to stop worrying. But that is by far one of the biggest ones, okay? So you can check out that post, or you can check out that study rather. And it was on the Huffington Post, okay? The Huffington Post, all right? And what it was titled was 85% of what we worry about never happens. So you can go and find that study and you can read more about it. Now, the second point that I wanted to mention when it comes to your worry and why you shouldn't worry anymore is simply this. Worry doesn't get rid of anxiety. Action does. And worry just simply adds to your anxiety because you're procrastinating. So think about it, guys. These things that you're constantly thinking about late at night, early in the morning, how many of these things can be solved by just simply taking small, simple steps? Okay. How many of these things can be solved by taking small, simple steps? Because as I talked about in the first point, right now what you're doing is you're taking out the metaphorical belt and you're just beating yourself with it. And that's the equivalent of worrying about whatever it is that you're thinking that will go wrong. So maybe I should stop and tell you guys, like, what is worry? Worry is you simply overthinking about some drastic and unimaginable outcome that will leave you hurt, in a bad situation, in a place where you can't recover, just anything bad. That is what worry is. It's you sitting, being lost in a cloud, just simply can't think of anything else except this negative thing, this bad thing that you think will happen to you. And as a result, you lose touch with your right here, right now moments. You lose touch with what's going on in front of you. You lose touch of what it is that you should be doing in this moment. So as a result, you're not taking quality actions, right? So you may be going about work. You may be going throughout your relationship. You may be going throughout your business, doing the thing, whatever the thing is, but you're not doing it to the level that you know you can be doing it and that you should be, to be honest. And the reason why is because you're lost in a cloud of worry, okay? So again, how to get rid of that worry? Well, it's action. Because here's the thing that action provides. It provides clarity. And that's what people do when they're worrying about something and they're just thinking and thinking and thinking. What I see a lot is that people try to find the easiest way to do hard things. And that's kind of the backlash of all of these hacks and secrets and tricks that you see on social media and all these other places. Because some things, guys, you just got to do it uncomfortable. But the beauty part, right? The beautiful part about that is that as you take these actions, things will get a little bit easier. You will gain more clarity. And your ability to do hard things will actually increase, okay? Because here's the thing. It's going to be hard no matter who's doing it. But your ability to start, your ability to do it, your ability to complete it will increase, and it'll be greater than anyone that's in your competition, anyone that's in your field. And that will help you to leapfrog anybody that you think may be better than you, right? Anyone that you may think is, they're coming from it, or they do the exact same thing. Don't worry about it, because here's the thing. Most people, they will not take actions on the things that they've learned, the things that they've been taught, or the things that they know that they should be taking, right? Most people won't take action. And the reason why is because they're stuck in this phase of, how do I just find out, how do I do it the easiest way? How do I find a way to do something that's uncomfortable in a comfortable way? And guys, that part, it just doesn't exist. So the more action you take, the more clarity you will get, and the more the belief you start to develop within yourself that you can do hard things. So when it comes to this action that you're looking to take, I'll actually give you a quote from James Clear. And it's not necessarily a quote, but it's a strategy. So when you look at this task that you're going to do, I would ask you to ask yourself, if I had to break this task down into 5 phases, right? In terms of the intensity of it, what does a phase 1 of this task look like? So I'll give you an example. Let's say right now you have an idea about starting a podcast. Let's say it's a podcast like this. I would tell you that if you're thinking about doing a 30-minute podcast episode and you're going to do 3 of those a week and you've never done a podcast, I would tell you, well, let's scale it back and ask, what would a stage 1 of this doing a podcast goal look like? So that may look like doing 1 podcast episode, and maybe you do it for 10 minutes, right? Like, you see how easy we're able to make that action, that goal? We didn't have to go stage 5, the top stage and go all out. We just want to simply make it easier enough for us so that we can get clarity on, how do we set up this camera? How do I sound on the camera, right? How do I sound on the mic? What does the setup process look like? The editing process? How do I just get more familiar with it? And as you do that, that's where the worry starts to go away because you have clarity. So break these actions down and go from phase 1 to phase 5. So from phase 1 to phase 2, 3, 4, all the way up to phase 5. And that will help you with your worry. Main point number 3 of why you should not worry anymore. And I love this one. So you have survived, believe it or not, you have survived 100% of your bad days. Every bad day that you've had, every bad thought that you've had, every uncomfortable emotion that you've ever felt, you've survived it. And that's living proof of it because you're listening to this podcast right now. So what does that tell you? Well, that should tell you that you're resilient. That should tell you that you can do hard things. And then going back to my first point, that should tell you 85% of the things that you're worrying about doesn't come to fruition. And the last 15% that does happen, you find that you can handle it, or it's going to teach you a valuable lesson. And that valuable lesson may make it easier for you to do the next hard thing or to overcome the next worry that much more easier. So there's a lot of benefits, guys, to doing hard things. And this is proof of it. So again, you survive 100% of your bad days. But also, I'll add this. You know, your spirituality, and most of my podcast listeners, they practice some form of spirituality, right? Some form of religion. And what I love to think about is that I survive 100% of these tough days, these bad days, or these worrying thoughts. I survived 100% of them because I have someone backing me up. I have some greater power that's bigger than my own that's able to handle these things that I'm worried about. So whether your God is, let's say, Jesus, or it's just simply God, like so I'm thinking of the Jewish religion, right? They believe that this is the God of Moses. I believe, if I'm mistaken, please do not judge me, if you will. So whether it's Jesus, the God of Moses, it can be Buddha, it could be Muhammad, it could be Shiva, right? For people that practice Hinduism, whoever your God is, trust and believe that they are backing you up. And if I truly believe that my God, so your God, is backing you up, wouldn't you go through life a little bit more carefree? Wouldn't you be able to let go of this worry a little bit easier simply because you know that something bigger than you is guiding you, that has your back? If you use that as your frame of reference, it'll help you to have this shield of armor that surrounds you, that allow you to go through hell and high water and come out on the other side unfazed. And then main point number 4, my last point, the fear you have is the same fear that people that have done great things have experienced. I want you guys to think about this, right? The same fear that you have is the same fear that people that have done great things have felt. Fear knows no difference between you and, let's say, Muhammad Ali, or you and Denzel Washington, or one of my personal favorites, you and Kobe Bryant. Fear is fear. It's all about how you decide to hold on to that fear, what you decide to do when that fear is present, that determines if you're going to be able to overcome it. Because, guys, fear is probably the most natural thing that we all experience. And I can make the case, and I have made this case on this podcast, but also in my personal sessions, where I tell clients that it is actually fear that does keep you alive. Because if I remove fear from you, guess what you would do? You would get in your car without wearing a seatbelt. You would cross streets without looking both ways, right? Like, there's so many different things you would do. You would go into the water without knowing how to swim, right? So there has to be a level of fear. Now, how you hold on to it, as I mentioned, does make a big difference. But please trust and believe that that feeling that you have, those thoughts that you experience, are the same thoughts that people before you have experienced and won against. So why can't you? I love thinking about this when it comes to my own personal speaking, my own business that I'm building, if you will, because guys like Tony Robbins, Russell Brunson, who is a great marketer, and even Bishop T.D. Jakes, all these guys have gone on the big stages and told their crowds that they remember when they were in front of just 2 people, right? And they spoke to them as if there was thousands of people in front of them. And guess what that did? That allowed them time and effort to practice a skill, whether it be marketing, public speaking, or both, to get to where they are now. So if Tony Robbins, who is easily a billionaire, was able to start off with just two people in front of a room, right? In front of a room of two people and become a billionaire, why can't I? Why can't you? So I want you guys to be able to normalize this. And I'll even go a little further because recently I had a new client. So it was our first session. And I always give my clients, when I first meet them, just an opportunity to ask me any question that they would like. So he asks me this question. He says, "Hey, coach, do you ever struggle with confidence?" And very quickly I told him, yeah, like, dude, I'm human, right? Like, don't get it confused. Like, just because I'm a therapist or a coach, or just because I'm someone that specializes in confidence, doesn't mean that I don't lack it at times. But the thing is when I lack confidence, let's say the feeling, I know that there's still my ability to take action. So when confidence isn't in the room, can I take steps forward? This is what I love telling people. Faith really is. When the confidence isn't there, that's where you have to lean on your faith. And as you're leaning on your faith, guess what's going to happen? That confidence is going to increase. So you can't lose. And that goes back to my first point, where 97% of all the things that you're worrying about, the worst part of it is just the worry. Because either it's not going to happen, or you're going to find that you can handle it, or you're going to find that you're going to learn a valuable lesson from it. So again, 97% of the things that you're worried about, dude, trust me, you can handle it. So I always love going over these topics because I know that you as a listener can grab a lot of value from it. And if you're not subscribed to this channel, make sure you go ahead and hit the subscribe button and comment on what parts of this episode you really enjoyed. Now, what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to summarize these main points so that way you can write them down if you need to, or just simply remember them. I always tell people when you write things down, you have a better chance of remembering them. So the first point I made was that, again, 85% of the things that we worry about doesn't even happen. And the last 15%, we find that we can handle it, or we have a great valuable lesson that we learn from it. So to summarize that first main point, 97% of the things that you worry about, the worst part is the worry. And that goes to that first quote that I said, where many things have happened to me in my life, most of which have never happened. The second point, worry doesn't get rid of anxiety, action does. Worry just adds more anxiety due to procrastinating. My main point number 3, you have survived 100% of your bad days. And also I want you to know and believe and trust that your God, your spirituality is backing you up when you go and you face hard things. And if your God is who you say they are, then they should have your back when you go and do hard things. Or when you're up late at night, sitting there worrying. Place your worries on their shoulders and then go back to sleep so you can get ready for the next day. And then the main point number 4, my last point, the fear that you have is the same fear that people before you have experienced and have done great things. So fear is normal. And I want you guys to see that and trust that other people have experienced this and done great things. So why can't you? So this is Coach Wells, and thank you for checking out this podcast.